says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to I'm not quite sure what to call it, boys, but sort of the amalgamated everything episode of the Tip Sheet podcast. Got a bit of NRL news, bit of previews, bit of Origin talk. But as always, I'm your host, John, also known as Forty20. Joining me for this Frankensteinian amalgamation monster of a podcast are my good mates, Sixties and Clint. Fellas, how you holding up on the bye week?
Mate, it doesn't feel like a bye week. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. It feels like we're flat out with all of our TCT stuff, but I guess we'll know it come the weekend when there's no Parramatta first grade in action. But yeah, mate, doing well and looking forward to tonight's women's State of Origin.
Very much so. Quint, how you doing, mate?
Feeling very good after 2 points last week, but I'm probably a little bit different in that I'm definitely having some withdrawals, feeling the effects of bye week, and knowing that we have to wait until King's birthday Monday for the next time our boys run out. But looking forward to getting into this show. Yeah,
it's an odd one, isn't it? It's the King's birthday now, where the Eels will be taking on the Bulldogs as part of that new sort of annual game that they're playing. But before I hand over the reins to you, 60s, to lead the NRL news and previous two podcast. Quick shout out to the sponsors of the show, which are Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, as well as Big Swing Golf, Northmead, helping bring the show a couple times a week. All right, 60s, I'll cue you in now.
News team, assemble!
Well, coming into news week and our news episode on the back of the Parramatta Eels win is a good place to be. So let's just quickly kick off with our final takes from the game over against the Cowboys, the tight victory that we enjoyed there. John, mate, what's your final takes on that match?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it wasn't obviously a perfect game by any means, but looking back on it now, we just played a really good brand of football. Yeah, we didn't ice all our opportunities, but functionally, the way we went about constructing our attacking sets was really positive. We weren't playing stupid football. We built really nicely from right to left and left to right. The Cowboys made a couple of good saves, so well done to them there. In the second half, the game management in that third quarter of play was outstanding. Really positive stuff there, not seeing the Eels lose their way after oranges and try and force points. They built the pressure, got the lead. Yes, the Cowboys came back with a bit of luck. There was some very opportunistic bounces of the football and a couple of marginal forward passes that might have been missed, but the Cowboys got their way back in, and again, the Eels didn't panic. So, yeah, really, really encouraging football. Seeing a lot of those fringe guys like Offa Hickey Ogden and Makahesi Makatoa standing up in the absence of senior core forwards has been really, really good. And, yeah, seeing a player like Sean Russell starting to get back to where we sort of had him projected the B-boys after that really shoddy start in 2023 was really nice to see.
Oh, mate, and just before I throw to Clint, we caught up with Eels GM of football, Mark O'Neill, during the week this week, and he did reveal he's got a little side bet going on with Sean Russell. I'm sure he doesn't mind us just letting that drop, just a lunch over a certain try-scoring target this year. So,
and it's going to go down to the wire, yeah.
He's almost on target, Sean Russell. So we'll see how that one pans out. Clint, your takes on the victory over the Cowboys?
It was a game that we definitely warmed into, and to echo some of 40's thoughts, it's it was great to see us not panic. I think there was a little bit of a collective feeling around certain pockets of the stadium when it was only 6-all and the Cowboys probably having a bit of better run of the play in the first half, that we're going to drop some points here after an excellent performance. But our senior players did everything that they had to, and again, echoing some of 40's thoughts, it was really great to see those fringe forwards continue to step up. And some players back up some really solid performances against the Rabbitohs, again against the Cows, and they get to go onto the bye and enjoy a good rest period before locking and loading, ready to go again, and hopefully for some of them, pushing for selection again come next round against the Bulldogs.
Yeah, look, there's not too much news coming out of the NRL squad at this stage because of the fact that it is a bye week. But certainly what we've been able to ascertain is that there's a real positivity around the club. There's that belief that in spite of the injuries that have been occurring, that they're in good stead. There's a positive mindset within the group, and that extends to the coaches and staff, and that it looks like it'll be a strong run into the back half of the season. Obviously, they'll follow the old rugby league cliche and take it one match at a time, as they always do. But they feel that the stage is set to have a very good back half of the season. However, there is a bit of news coming out of the NRLW. They've returned to pre-season training at their new HQ at Granville. We've seen some photos up on the Eels media. I had a quick chat with Dean Widders yesterday about being based at Granville. He's very happy about the new setup over there. And the other thing, of course, is news about Nathan Brown there, 40.
Yeah, I think it was actually an exclusive on the tip sheet a few weeks back when we spoke to him ahead of the SG Ball Grand Final. But today, the Parramatta Eels confirming that as part of an expanded set of responsibilities at the club, Nathan Brown will be joining the NRLW coaching ranks in, I believe, a consulting role as a coaching advisor. So that really bolsters their instructional capabilities, obviously, with Dean Widders, Kate Mullally, and who else am I missing there, boys?
Shah Henry.
Shah Henry, that's right. Yeah, Shah Henry. So that is a really impressive brain trust there for our NRLW squad. And, yeah, really keen to see Brownie's expanded role in the Eels as he covers not just the juniors and the junior reps, but now more senior spots as well.
Yeah, and Clint, what's your thoughts on that? On that change over to Granville Park?
Well, it's great to see that they've, obviously as works still continue at Kellyville Park, that the women's side now can use Granville as a dedicated resource for all their training. Obviously there's being the women's side, they have needs of their own, and it speaks again to the not just the I guess the level of professionalism is probably the word I'm looking for here, that continues to evolve year on year in the NRLW as that continues to scale up, both from a club perspective internally and from the competition perspective externally of the Eels. So it's great that they get to operate out of there. I think we touched on earlier in the year about the works that have taken place down there with the new grandstand and LED floodlights that have been installed there. It's a good facility if you're yet to see it. But yeah, great news for the NRLW team.
Yeah, it was a facility that we got to have a close look at for the final round of the Eels junior reps, and it was they've got as you said, they've got a new stand there. They've got a function room as part of that stand. They've got the dressing sheds there that they require for professional training. And look, I think the thing is with that as well, that you mentioned with the works that are going to be taking place at Kellyville, it's not then they need a home in the meantime. And previously they've been sharing the facilities with where the junior reps train, which is over at Morris Brothers High School at Westmead, and they're also using the New South Wales Rugby League Centre of Excellence. And when you're splitting where you train and you're having to work in the when to a degree with maybe sharing facilities, those sorts of things, it makes it good that you've got a place that is your place to train. So I think that's a real positive for the Eels going into this season. Now that pretty much wraps up what we want to talk about for the news out of Parramatta. So we're going to power on to news across the wider rugby league community, the NRL and Origin. And we will get into our Origin takes very, very quickly. But just first cab off the rank in the NRL, is it any surprise that it was beyond rumoured. It was almost like taken as a certainty that Jason Ryles was going to end up at the Dragons. And what do you know?
9.5s and 10.0s across the board from the judges. Yeah, that was an all-time. That's a DCE tier backflip right there. From having a 4 or 5 year super contract at the Dragons to suddenly going back to Melbourne as the.
I think, mate, he's going to become. I mean, you just mentioned their DCE tier. I mean, out there you see people rate things as S tier. Prior to that, it was DCE tier in rugby league when it came to backflips. I think Ryles is now the ultimate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's certainly the one the metric that's going to be compared to because of the recency bias, 100%. But can you blame him? I mean, scientists in Australia have discovered a genetic link between dragons and tigers in recent times. It looks like there's some real weird stuff going on in the animal kingdom. So instead of going to the mess that would be that tier of club, you go to Melbourne, where, yes, you're going to be compared to Craig Bellamy when you eventually take over from him, but you're inheriting an incredible system and some incredible players.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I guess the other thing, too, is that we've seen that the Dragons still can't quite get it right because we had the scenario around the captaincy in the last week, and their choice of captain wasn't probably ideal when it came to getting community or public support for the selection. Clint, what's your take on where the Dragons are heading? Ryles' decision, where to next for the Dragons?
Well, depending on which side of the ledger you stand on here, I might upset some St. George fans in saying this, but I think it's good foresight from Jason Ryles at this particular point in time to have the restraint and control to go, you know what, this isn't the best decision for me. And to examine his options and to ultimately end up at the Storm. For his own personal career, that's a good decision. For the Dragons fans who probably wanted to bring an old player home and saw someone fit for purpose for their club, and then for it to break down at the 11th hour, it'd be incredibly disappointing, But it's obviously a reflection of where they're at the moment. We hear news of just in the previous days as well of St. George Bank announcing that they're not going to continue their sponsorship of their major sponsorship of the Dragons beyond its current deal, which ends at the end of next season. So there's whether it's a true reflection of exactly what's happening or not. We can only speculate at this point. But normally, when there's smoke, there's fire, gents, and it's not painting a pretty picture from the outside, and it's a hard sell for the Dragons now. And that's from getting their new head coach and essentially spiritual leader and representative of the organization in place, as well as it is selling the corporate dream and saying, we're an attractive prospective partnership for your business to associate yourselves with. It's going to make it a lot harder for them to get a new major sponsor. And St. George is St. George Bank and the St. George Illawarra Dragons is a very natural fit. Not too dissimilar to Steggles Chicken and the Roosters. So it's saying a lot about what's happening in there at the moment, even if we're not privy to all the details, because people from all angles and all aspects of the club are saying, no, thanks, not for us right now.
I'm going to pose a question to both of you then. Would St. George be better advised right now to offer a 1 or 2 year deal to Ryan Carr during that time to get all of their systems and processes that they've talked about that they were going to have in place for Jason Ryles? Because remember, all of a sudden they were going to be, oh, look, we're going to have everything in place for him. We're going to have this, we're going to have this, we're going to have this. Now, there's no sell if that's not in place for a start. Next, do they want another name candidate knocking them back because there isn't anything in place? And thirdly, we've got a high regard for Ryan Carr as a potential for. Well, I've regarded him as a potential first-grade coach during his time at the Eels. I thought, well, this bloke will end up being an NRL coach. Are they going to lose anything by having him as a coach in the short term? Who knows? He might actually be the diamond that they're able to find in all of this mess. And if it isn't, at least they have a time to get their processes and their systems in place, and then offer themselves as more of a full product to a potential higher profile experienced coach.
It's not too dissimilar to the situation that Parramatta found themselves in at the back end of 2013 after Ricky Stewart walked out in the club. And they were faced with the option of taking, a couple of relatively inexperienced coaches in Jason Taylor and Brad Arthur. And obviously there's some crazy story there as well, insofar as how it all played out and the Eels getting Brad Arthur. But yeah, when you're absolutely at the bottom of the barrel and you're scraping up the muck, you don't have the luxury of going out and getting a big name coach very often. Sometimes you can, go out there and jag it on the back of enough money and enough promises, but the Dragons tried that and it didn't work. And in saying that, Ryles isn't a proven coach. He is very much a rookie, the same way that Ryan Carr or any other similar candidate would be. So, yeah, I think that maybe that sort of 1+1 or 2+1 option sort of contract in the club's favour, because they would have maybe a little bit more leverage there talking to someone like Ryan Carr, to let them either steady the ship under him and get right and maybe start building a la Brad Arthur, or Ryan Carr isn't the guy and the situation was too big for him. That's not to say he wouldn't be a good coach in a different situation, but at the Dragons it might not work out for him. But you haven't overcommitted resources to him. You've got an opportunity to get the club a little bit healthier in terms of your systems and pathways and whatnot. And then, you can go try and sell it to a better candidate.
Yeah, Clint, any final thoughts on that?
That's absolutely the direction I'd be going in if I was in the Dragons hierarchy, without a shadow of a doubt. There's nothing to be gained by going back out to market and letting there being speculation around all of this continuing well into the next season. I think they need to make this commitment sometime in the next couple of weeks. Say, this is what we're doing. We believe in our guy. Give Ryan the chance, as Forty's very eloquently put, it's a very similar situation where we were about 10, 11 years ago. And obviously, as he suggested, Sixties, put the deal in the club's favour there. And, I don't think Ryan's going to, given the position that he's at in his career now, is going to turn around and try and make demands around a contract like that. And continue to work away and chip at things in the background. There's no shortcuts in any of this, and we mentioned in pods earlier this year about, frustrating hearing the public support saying for incoming or an inbound Dragons coach getting all these resources that weren't made available to Anthony Griffin during his time and tenure there. To me, your resources are your resources, and you shouldn't be taking shortcuts. But I think ultimately that's the direction the Dragons have to go. Though they have to commit to Ryan and move on from the speculation who the coach will be, and just chip away at everything, every little small thing. There's no shortcuts in any of this. They just got to set themselves very easy, attainable goals of being better, a little bit better at everything every single day. That's their way forward.
Yep, absolutely. Now, we've just been talking about coaches, and I want to quickly mention now there's been some tremendous support for Daniel Anderson and the battle that he has at the moment in working his way back from that terrible surfing accident that he had. His spirit that's been shown in the coverage and the especially the wonderful piece on Fox on his not just the recovery process that he's going through, but it was all about as well his attitude towards what's happened and where he's going, and you can see his relationship with the people that are around him. It was a really great piece that was put together there with all the people involved, including Vonnie, who's one of our favourites here. But I just wanted to quickly mention to people, it's obviously been mentioned in these programs, but if you get on board and support via the Daniel Anderson Support Fund that's been set up, and go to danielandersonfund.com.au and get involved there. Okay. Fellas,
just before we do move on their Sixties, I just want to add, Daniel was a colleague of mine for a few years when I worked at the club, and I wasn't aware of his situation until this news became a little bit more public in the last week or two, and I was completely heartbroken to see and hear of this news. When the accident happened, I was actually overseas at the point in time, so I wasn't aware that something had happened. But I can absolutely echo what everyone else has seen over the past week. To Daniel's strength, he was exactly like that as a colleague. He was a very ardent supporter of me, and very supportive of my time when I worked at the club, and is someone I had a lot of time for, and he's someone who always took time out of his day for me. And I was completely heartbroken to hear this news, and I'll absolutely be one of those people donating. But I just want to urge people, if there's anything that you can spare, please do. He's a really wonderful man. He's an Eels man. Even though he's still got his role at the Roosters now, he is Eels family, and a lot of the success that we experienced at junior levels through the mid '90s and going to the turn of the century, Daniel Anderson was at the forefront of a lot of that, and he probably doesn't get a lot of the credit that he did deserve at that particular point in time, of being Brian Smith's right hand man and being the go-to guy through the junior systems there. So, to Red, we love you, but the Eels fraternity is absolutely behind you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well said, mate. Well said. Now, we do have to really dive into the origin here, because I don't think it was any surprise to a lot of people that Queensland won the first State of Origin match.
Everyone I spoke to,
I'm sure, fellas,
tips on Queensland.
But despite what journos were saying, just the rank and file punters out there knew that we were going to be up against it from the moment that the teams were named.
Mm-hmm.
John, you and Clint were having
off.
quite an intense conversation about this before we recorded, and I said to you, fellas, don't leave this quality here. Let's get this onto the podcast. So, mate, I'll just throw it to you first of all. John, fire away.
I got a laundry list of things. Like, first off, I want to say, get this out of the way. I am completely detached from Origin now. I watch it as a neutral, essentially. Obviously, you want para players to play well when they're in there and not get injured. But the embarrassing, lurching nature of the New South Wales sort of behemoth structure from year to year, just makes it so hard to get invested. So I'm going to start with you got one prop on the bench in like the most difficult, like gladiatorial conditions. One prop on the bench, one middle forward on the bench. You insist on picking players because of club connections, but then you flip the sides of the field that they play on. The Penrith players all play on the right, and they got put on the left. Adokar is a left edge winger in the Bulldogs. He played on the right. So go figure that one out. You pick absolute flops. And that's not to say that a player like Hudson Young isn't a good club level player, but he tanked it in this game. And even worse, the player that everyone knew was going to tank it, Tavita Pangai Jr., he absolutely butchered it. Like, he had a shocker. So, the same core players that we know are great club players but have shown consistently that they can't step up at the Origin level, tanked it again. And they're getting a lot of protection from the media because the way it's being phrased as loaded questions, like, speaking to someone like James Tedesco, he had a bad game, but what's your message to all the haters for him? It's like, he can have a bad game and you can be critical of him and not be a hater. You can call for him to be dropped or have a different capacity in the team in terms of attacking structures, where he's almost Paul Gallen-esque as a fullback now, where he is just dominating the team in a really bad way, to the point that it's killing attacking structures and fluency of the team. And then it is okay to say that Nathan Cleary is an incredible club level halfback, the best in the world, but can't perform at State of Origin. That is almost factually proven at this point. But yet the media want to protect these players and the narratives behind it. And yeah, just, oh my goodness, like it's so frustrating. And well done to the Queenslanders, by the way, as much as I'm going to complain about New South Wales. I used to scoff at the idea of the Queensland spirit and how much of a toss and a wank it was. But down a man last night off I'm not going to say a dubious sin bin, because the only angle we got because of the terrible broadcast work was that rear angle where it didn't show the point of contact on the left shoulder. So I assume the bunk would have had better angles. So cause from that angle, it looked like a dubious sin bin. But they went down a man and scored 2 tries. The hammer is, I love watching him, and he just killed it there. So well done to Queensland. Cameron Munster continues to show he is an absolute animal, one of the best to play the game at any level. And they were too good. New South Wales, however, embarrassing.
Yeah, Clint?
John and I are absolutely in the same camp here, Sixties. I am completely indifferent to Origin. To be perfectly honest, I'm not going to lie, gents. There was a point in time, a couple of times actually, where I flicked to something else on the screen during the coverage, because I just have that level of indifference towards Origin now. And part of that's because you knew this was going to happen. This felt like the story had already been written, and everyone knew it except the New South Wales coaching team and selectors. Or that they did know it. Worse, that they did know it, but they wanted to through their own hubris almost. They're just like, no, we're going to do it this way because in our heads it's going to work, and we want to show you and stick it to you all and say that it did. Well, you know what? The balance of probabilities, as expected, didn't work in their favour. They had 53% possession. They had a full 3 minutes more time of possession than Queensland did. Queensland had a sin bin, albeit a dubious one, depending on which side of the ledger you sit on. Likewise, they had a couple of players go down with HIAs, I should say, and injury throughout the game. Still couldn't take advantage of it.
And the moment we put a half into the centres, Cameron Munster leaps on the opportunity. Like that is the difference between the two teams. It's like that series years ago where Thurston was a dead weight out there because he busted his shoulder for 3 quarters of the game and we didn't run at him a single time.
And all you could hear was Andrew Johns
muffled screams into the mic. It felt like, It goes back to this idea that players like Cleary and company are incredible club-level players playing within their structures and having the support staff and support players that really bring out the best of their game. But you step up to the Origin level where there's more asked of you and more asked of you playing in and out of structure and the ability to read the flow of the game. And that's where someone like Cameron Munster is a borderline savant compared to pretty much everyone else in the arena, to be fair. But especially players like Cleary, who the tempo and the intensity of the game goes up and he gets panicked and he gets frustrated and he looks like he's half a second slow. And we saw that last night with his decision-making, his passing, even his kicking wasn't as good as it usually is. So, and credit to players.
Telegraphed.
Yeah, exactly. He's on a script. And the moment the Queenslanders go off script as they want to do, because that's all they do at Origin, it feels like, is just play the game based on the unique characteristics of a given game. The moment they do that, he starts getting panicked. And the other player that also deserves a shout out there for Queensland was DCE, who I thought outside of that one drop.
He was great.
Outside that one drop where he had a quick look, the 40-20 was incredible. He completely schooled Teddy there. Again, he just ran the show beautifully.
For me, it comes down to, and it's been the case for more years than it hasn't been, is that Queensland select Origin players to play
They
Origin.
get the concept. They just do. They get the concept better than New South Wales.
And they want it more.
Like I said, I used to think it was a toss. It was like this whole media thing, and Queenslanders beating their chest about it. But it's true.
Yeah, same.
It's true.
But it's absolutely true.
But the other thing we'll say, Quint, just before we move on, 60s, going back to Mitch when he played for his one cap for New South Wales, played far better than what we saw from Cleary last night, with a broken back, with a more inferior team, and he got dragged.
Had 2 try assists in that game.
2 try assists and nearly won the game at the end and got dragged for it. That was with a much better game. Imagine if he or Adam Reynolds, whoever else you want to insert in there, except for maybe Nico, who is obviously a bit of a media darling right now, and he's a good player. Like I'm not having a shot at Nico here. Don't get that wrong. But if he had that game last night, he would have been dead set stamped to never play the game again. from the media and from the selectors. But again, there's protected species in this game. When it is okay to say that Nathan Cleary is an outstanding club player, one of the best in the game, but struggles at Origin, and yet people don't want to say it.
Yeah. No, I agree entirely. And but I guess then it comes down to is the halfback option Nico Hines, is the halfback option Mitch Moses. I mean,
I'll tell you one thing they can do is pick two halves that can kick instead of having one half that lets Queensland just cheat, not cheat like actually in the game, but sell out on the kick pressure to punish Cleary.
You do half their job for them when you do that.
Yeah, exactly. You talk about playing to a game script. You were giving Queensland your game script and saying, yeah, this is what we're going to do, for one of the most important parts of the territorial battle and the possession battle. Come at us. Like it is.
Yeah, and look, I want to get to the point about Queensland that I was making before too, about Queensland selecting Origin players and also selecting players who are absolutely in form. Now, the media tried to beat up the non-selection of Gagai and the selection of Hamiso, Tabuai-Fidow over the top of him. Which one of those players was in form?
I hate that Hammer as a Queenslander because he is so fun to watch. It feels dirty. Yeah. It feels dirty cheering for him, but he's so good.
So he's in form, right? Now, we have a look at the New South Wales selections. Tedesco is now probably in the worst form of his career.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Tommy Turbo, who until he had a decent game against the Raiders, had stunk.
But he had that game. Standards. He had that game and looked good, but then went immediately back to the Tommy would seem for the last 4 weeks. Last night,
yes.
The head knock's going to give him a lot of a leeway because he got injured, but he had no impact on that game. But prior to that,
and see, it comes back to he wasn't in Origin form. He hadn't been showing the form, and then not only that, they select him in a position. And I know he's played centre in Origin in the past, but he's a fullback, and Fittler ignores form and picks him in the hope that he will reproduce what he produced at centre for Origin like two or so years ago. So straight away, he's simply showing loyalty to Tedesco when Tedesco is out of form in a team that's out of form. He's selecting on hope with Turbo. As you said, he's selecting Josh Addo-Carr on the opposite wing to what he's in, what he normally plays,
and who was only one game back from an ankle injury.
Yep, and then the clanger of all clangers of Tavita Pangai Jr. as the starting prop, a player who has never, ever produced consistent form, ever. I mean, I would contend ever. And now this is the same coach who last year completely ignored the claims of the best prop in the game last year in Regan Campbell-Gillard and went how many deep in selecting props by game 3? I mean, how deep did he go into the reserves of props running around in the game? I mean, we ended up with the second twin from Newcastle, and then we ended up with Jordan McLean from North Queensland. Yeah, look, and then like John's talking about the structure of the bench. If there hadn't been that injury late in the game, Nico Hines is going to be sitting there not used at all on the bench. And we've had Eels supporters that have been critical about Brad Arthur selecting a player on the bench who isn't going to be used or is played for minimal minutes. This was Origin. He had one prop on the bench.
Nico Hines is a bench utility the same way Mitchell Moses would be a bench utility. Yeah, Mitchell come in and play fullback or dummy half if you needed him to. But you pick him to start or you don't pick him.
It's absolutely an omission in picking Hines in the first place that, mate, you're good enough form that I want to pick you, but I'm going to stick with the system, so I'm going to hedge my bets and select both you and Jerome Luai.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yeah,
tokenistic.
No
Yeah.
conviction about the identity of the team. Right. Just
no, and yeah, there was no. I mean, for a start, there was no identity in how we played. I had no idea what they were aiming to do last night.
They looked disjointed. Didn't look like a team that had trained. I mean, Queensland, yeah, they put some kick pressure on, but it wasn't like they were pouring through every set in defense. New South Wales had the possession advantage. They were wearing them down in terms of attrition, and yet it was New South Wales that was stumbling and bumbling. So, yeah, what were they doing for their week and a half in camp? Who knows? Mind you, one silver lining for us as Parramatta fans, thought Junior, even though he was underutilised, had a very good game, came on. I think he ran upright once and sort of got bent back, but aside from that, he dominated the advantage line, looked really good, and the Liam Martin try was almost built exclusively on the work he did across the 2 consecutive sets there, where he just absolutely pounded Queensland through the middle.
Yeah. Now, we best move on to the women's origin. And kickoff is just about to happen as we're recording this. And the New South Wales lineup is this. Starting at fullback, we've got Tonegata, Chapman, Kelly, Fui Mayono, Surgis, and we get into the halves of Southwell and Pearson.
Parramatta's
nice to see
halfback.
Pearsons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The props are Boyle and another Parramatta Eel, Kennedy Cherrington. We got Davis at dummy half. Back row, Koenig and Clydesdale. Brooke Anderson at lock. And the interchange apps, Togatuki, Bent, and Dodd with former Eel Ellie Johnson, the concussion sub. And then we have the Queenslanders, Upton at fullback, then going through the rest of the backs, Robinson, Cheziolka, Pelite, Bass, Aitken, and Tamara in the halves. The pack, Marto, Brill, Joseph, Gray, Power, and Brigginshaw now at lock. And their bench, Manselman, Elliston, Hollyman, and Teitzel, and the concussion sub of China Palata. So, fellas, we're going to go into our thoughts very quickly on this match and some tips. John.
Women's State of Origin has been a fantastic showpiece game as the standalone fixture for the last few years out at North Sydney Oval. Glad to see it's making the expansion jump now. You probably could have made a case for just going straight to a best of 3 rather than a best of 2, of points differential being the tie-breaking factor. But seeing that sort of growth in this game is huge for the ladies. Really keen to see them rewarded with the exposure, the coverage, and everything else that comes with it in terms of helping grow the game. Obviously going to be backing New South Wales here. I am more invested in New South Wales' outcome in this game than I am for the boys, simply because New South Wales, seem to understand the concept better on the women's side of the game than the men's. So really keen to see Kennedy and Rachel take to the field. Really keen to see how Rachel Pearson goes. Obviously, is the new sort of marquee acquisition, and Kennedy. Well, she's just going to bring the energy. We know what Kennedy's going to do, and it's always fun to watch.
Yeah. What about a score there, John?
They've been pretty good contests. So I'll go New South Wales 20, Queensland 16.
Yeah, Clint, your thoughts?
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, I absolutely care more about the women's outcome than the men's here, for exactly the reasons that John touched on. I think since announcing Rachel Pearson, this will probably be the first time that Eels fans will be taking a very very direct look at her and the way that she plays, and hopefully get a little bit of insight into what she's going to bring to us for the next 3 seasons. And Kennedy's a fan favorite. She'll tear it up as always.
Yeah, and your tip?
I'm going to go 24-18.
Of course, to the Blues.
Oh, yes, without saying, right?
Look, I guess the interesting thing for us is that we of course we don't get the coverage of the Harvey Norman New South Wales Rugby League Women's Premiership that. So I guess for us, we're going a little bit on last year's performances with the women. and less on what you'd call current form, because at the moment, as we mentioned, they've just started their NRLW preseason. So I guess the difference being that last year, the 2021 NRLW season was held at the start of 2022. So we had a little bit more recent form on which to judge how the players were performing. So it's a little bit harder for me to tip. I'm based on past seasons with the Origin. It's going to be a close contest. I only see 6 points in it. And I'm going for a very similar sort of scoreline of 24-18. And like yourselves, I'm looking forward to watching the Eels players go around in this contest. So, and as you said, be a good first up look at what we might be able to expect out of Pearson this year. Now, moving on, we're going to finish up our previews because there are a couple of Eels teams in action. First of all, we've got the Eels against the Knights up at Cessnock at the showground in Jersey Flegg, and we've got the Eels coming off a couple of, let's say, can we say snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory?
It sure feels like it,
here
doesn't
in
it?
the Jersey Flegg, John.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on this match, mate?
Well, in terms of the ladder positioning coming into this one, Eels have the ascendancy. They're coming into round 13 or 14 with 7th place in their possession up against the 9th place Newcastle Knights. Just the one win between the two sides, though. And indeed, when these two teams met not too long ago, back in round 9, the Knights claimed a pretty solid victory, 28-8. Eels have been bolstered by the injection of the SG ball players since then, and it's led to some good results on the whole, even if they have blown a couple of games in the most recent 2 defeats, including that one loss against the Rabbitohs where there was a lot of injuries at play. But yeah, just got to try and get right here in this game, Sixties. It's going to be a tough road trip going up the road to Cessnock for that doubleheader in the Flegg and the Cup. But they do get a bit of a boost. Lockie Blackburn's in the team. They got the big hyphen, Jonte Jr. Beffameza, who was really good in the New South Wales Cup, by the way, up against the ladder leading Bears. I mean, he posted 150 metres, good tackle rate, really good involvement in his first starting gig in senior football. So really well done to him. He'll be a big boost to this team and shores up that front row alongside Noah Reid. But yeah, it's just about getting back to fundamentals here, 60s, just getting through their sets and getting to their kick. And yeah, it's a bland and boring sort of company line to take there, but there's a reason why we say it. Because getting through your sets, winning that territorial battle, keeping yourself in the possession splits goes so far in rugby league. So get back to fundamentals. Just give yourself an opportunity to win rather than gifting the opposition, essentially free reign to attack your goal line. And
we do have the Knights being a little bit lower on the ladder than the Eels.
The Newcastle Pages.
Clint, sorry. Yeah. So, Clint, any of your thoughts on this before we press on and have a look at the New South Wales Cup?
Yeah, some big ins as Forty was alluding to there, and I think it's just about resetting things in the Flegg for those guys and reestablishing a new baseline and putting some of those other performances behind them. They haven't been awful, but they haven't generated the results that they wanted. Also worth noting that one-time Eels Howard Matthews grand finalist Miles Martin is lining up at lock for the Newcastle side. So some of those Flegg boys get to come back together again and play against an old teammate this weekend.
Yeah, and I'd like to do a bit of a shout out too. I thought that stepping in for Ethan Sanders, that Josh Lynn was very solid last week in that match.
It's going to be an interesting conundrum when Ethan's back, because he's not that far since he's going to be back, because he broke his hand. I think it'll be about a month, right? So, yeah, what do they do? Because Mac Porfisi is not a bad player, but Lynn and Sanders have the connection from the SG ball. So a real conundrum coming up for the Eels.
Well, I'd put it to you this way, that someone like Mac Puafisi is probably an ideal bench player in that he could probably come on and cover both forwards and backs.
True, he is a big
he is a big unit, but there might be a case to push for an SG ball halves combination in the Jersey Flegg there. Okay, moving now on to the New South Wales Cup, the Eels taking on the Knights there. The Knights are sitting down around the bottom of the ladder. The Eels mid-table there. A very good win last week the last couple of weeks by the Eels.
Yeah, biggest surprise of the season last week in my books.
Yes.
Eels embarrassing the Bears out at Combank, given the teams that were announced and the loss of Jake Arthur to the Manly Seagulls and the players unavailable due to NRL honours because the NRL team has just been ravaged in the forward pack. I had that down as a
isn't it amazing then that, because you mentioned about the Eels being ravaged in the forward pack in the NRL, that the New South Wales Cup is almost fielding a team of forwards for the entire team.
Well, with the benefit of the bye, in the NRL, they've got a pretty stacked, stacked forward pack, but also a stacked forward line.
Yes, so just to clarify for people, the centre pairing is Jira Momasia and Dan Keir, who are back rowers. So they are the starting centres. And then you've got a pack of, which is Ogden and Makatoa in the front row, Many Luke at lock, Murchie and Dury in the back row, locked by Luca Moretti. And then the entire bench forwards with Nico Apelu, Tony Matteelli, Kai Rodwell, and Tavita Tomapenu. So it's for a team that has a lot of players out in first grade, they're ensuring that a number of those players don't have a week off, that they're playing the ones that might be required in NRL even next week will be having a run in New South Wales Cup this week.
BA looking to keep the motors of Makatoa and Ogden running hot. Obviously, Dury, Moretti, Murchie, they're all NRL prospects too. So they're all guys going to be in the equation when the Eels get back to business in the top grade. Looking forward to... This game will be streamed, I believe. So we'll be able to catch this game at Cessnock online. Looking forward to see if Zach Sini can back up his efforts. Sixties, he was probably best on field for the Eels against the Bears. He went over 300 metres. I think there was like 16 tackle breaks. Had a huge game slotting at the back. But I suppose this isn't an attack on Zach because he obviously had an incredible game. But if the game's a little bit more close, I suppose that's where fullbacks have their mettle really tested, don't they? When you're not completely dominating field possession and and possession.
Yeah, absolutely. Clint, your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, well, it was only, I think it was about a month or so back, maybe even 6 weeks back, that we played the Knights out at Kellyville, and it was probably the best performance of the season from the New South Wales Cup side, that game. And that was the week following that awful thrashing at the hands of the Warriors over in New Zealand. So, they'll fancy their chances, but there's some NRL players in the Knights side as well. But I think very much the message to some of the boys who played NRL for us last week and are playing Cup this weekend is there's still some spots open in our NRL side for the Bulldogs game. Best on ground wins.
Yeah. Okay. Quick tip then for these two matches in the Flegg and the New South Wales Cup. First of all, John,
I think any win for the Flegg is a good win this week. So I don't really care for margins. Or scores. Obviously, putting on a good score would be nice. But just getting back in the winners column is the only priority for this team because, like you said, they've sort of snatched defeat from the jaws of victory in the last two games, and you just want to get back to your winning ways any way possible.
Yep, Clint.
Yeah, look, it's with some of those ins there, I absolutely entertain a win taking place for the Flegg. As John said, margins don't matter, just the W.
Yeah, and look, I concur there. I think the Eels have the team in the Jersey Flegg to take victory there. I'm sure they'll be back to their winning ways. It's they played well enough to get wins the last couple of weeks, and it's just a matter of icing their opportunities this week, which I believe they'll do. And New South Wales Cup, I guess the only take there is that they can defend well out in the centres. Because really they should have the edge in the forwards in that game over the Newcastle side. Now, fellas, I'm going to very quickly go through the NRL round and just get a quick tip off both of you. We don't need margins, just a winner. Tigers and Raiders.
Oh, it's a home game for the Tigers. I don't know. It's a false market for the Tigers. It feels like the last couple of wins, like they've been
Yeah.
good efforts, but I think maybe the Raiders get him coming back to ground here.
Yeah, Clint.
I'm going to go to the other side of the coin. And while I agree with 40 sentiments, I think at Campbelltown, I'd like to see the Tigers pivot, if for nothing more than just to take some points off the Raiders and narrow the gap to the Eels.
Yeah, that helps us. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go for the Raiders there at Campbelltown. I just think they'll be too strong. Interesting one here: Warriors and Dolphins.
Obviously not going to get Tom Gilbert back on the Dolphin side. He busted his shoulder, and I wouldn't expect Hammer to back up too. So I think I'll tip the home team and the Warriors here.
Clint?
Yep, same here.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Warriors on that one there. I'm still waiting for the Dolphins to falter. Titans and Rabbitohs.
Surely the Rabbitohs. Surely. Campbell Graham's got plenty to prove here after. I mean, he sort of pulled himself out of Origin camp, but then wasn't called back in. I'm going for the Bunnies.
Yeah, Clint.
Should be a very comfortable South Sydney victory.
I agree wholeheartedly there. Sharks and Broncos.
This one's in the Shire. I think Cobbo's not backing up. Walsh should. Cobbo's named to play here, but in his interview I saw today, he said he's not backing up. This one may be a coin toss. I'm probably going to go Broncos here, but probably I wouldn't be surprised the Sharks got up for this one.
Clint?
I can imagine after last night, Nico Hines being quite fired up and ready to get back to club footy and try and make a statement at club footy to keep himself in the frame in a very tight contest. And simply because they're the home side, I'm going to go the Sharkies.
Yeah, home game win there for the Sharks for mine. Roosters and Bulldogs. This could be an interesting call here.
Yeah, this is an awful game on paper. Roosters are downward spiral. The Dogs are who we thought we are, despite the media hype from the off season. They always get media hype in the off season, but they've been very orderly this year. Another coin toss game. I'll take the Bulldogs.
Yeah, Clint.
I have no gauge on what the Roosters are at the moment. You would do a ladder predictor 6 weeks ago, and you'd say the Roosters do this by 30 plus comfortably. But who knows what's going to happen? I'm waiting for a bounce back from what they've been showing thus far, and I think this might be the game they do it after coming off a bye. Roosters by a small.
Interesting media takes recently about Reid Marnie taking the Bulldogs to a new level this year. I'm gonna tip the Roosters with that one. The Cowboys and the Storm.
Just looking at this Storm team, see if there's any noticeable outs. Oh, Will Robb re-signed for Storm for 3 years, by the way. He's been a pretty good player, pretty good pickup for them.
Yeah, very good pickup. Very good pickup.
Big man out in that flank. Looking at this Storm team, it's actually pretty good. So it could be Melbourne and Melbourne by plenty.
Yeah, Clint.
I think Melbourne get the job done, but there's some of the cavalry starting to return for the Cowboys, and in spite of what happened to the Tigers 2 weeks ago, and Origin affected teams playing each other when we played them last week. I think they'll make a competition of this at home, but I think Melbourne's still too good.
Yeah, I'm going to go Melbourne by plenty as well. Agreeing with 40 there on that one. And finally, with 3 teams having the bye this week, which is Manly, Newcastle and Parramatta, we get to the last game, which is a Sunday night game, 6:15 kickoff at Penrith, the Panthers and the Dragons.
Well, we had the kind of like bounce back new coach game, and then the capitulation against the Dolphins for the Dragons. And I think it's unfortunately for Ryan Carr, who's the interim coach, he's inherited an awful situation, and it's not going to get much better with some Penrith players that are going to be stinging after getting embarrassed by Queensland.
Yeah, Clint.
$5 is way too short for the Dragons. They should be a bit further out than that. And likewise, $1.18 feels like it's good value for Penrith. I expect that to shorten up more as kickoff comes because this could get ugly.
Yeah, I was going to say this when 40 just said we went from bounce back to capitulation, and the next level is ugly embarrassment. I'll use both of your terms. Clint, you said it'll get ugly. John, you said embarrassment. So I'll put it together and say this will be an ugly embarrassment for Dragons. And I reckon the Penrith could win this by 30 or more in terms of the final margin.
It's going to
Well,
be.
fellas, that wraps it up. We're gonna jump on and catch up with the New South Wales women's Origin game. To all of our listeners, thank you for joining us this week. We will keep the content coming this week on TCT, so please check in every day for new content that we'll have up there. Again, a huge thank you to our tip sheet sponsors in Big Swing Golf at Northmead and star partners Real Estate Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. Thank you, fellas. Job well done tonight. And go you Eels.